Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in this world. We're going to get started soon. I see a couple more people are still joining on, so we'll allow some of those attendees to join us, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So give us about probably another 30 to 40 seconds. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started now. Again, welcome. Welcome. This is something that we do once every 2 weeks, where we try to provide our customers or potential customers with a view as to how Domotz works, really give you a live demonstration of where we are, and then even talk about some of the new features that we have enabled over the last couple of weeks. Before we get started, let's do some discussions about GoToWebinar. First of all, you can listen in on your computer, or you can call in. I think most people are listening in on computers lately. If you do have any troubles with audio, sometimes switching back and forth between phone or computer audio will help resolve some of that. This is a live demo. The attendees themselves are muted, but we know that a lot of times you'll have questions. We welcome those questions. In fact, we want you to ask those questions. Take advantage of the questions section that is in the GoToWebinar control panel. Feel free to type those questions as you hear things. We will try to respond to those ASAP. If anything, we'll have a Q&A at the end, and we'll talk about those there. Keep in mind, we've got 2 different support channels. You can go to sales@domotz.com, and we can answer questions about billing or your account information. You also can go to support@domotz.com for technical questions, or if you're having trouble with your account. I wanted to mention that. In today's agenda, we're really going to just demonstrate Domotz's general functionality, how it works, what it is it does. We'll talk about some of the core value propositions. We do have a team standing by. We have several of our sales guys as well as our support team that are going to do our best to answer any questions that you guys provide live. But then I also want to invite Giancarlo, who I want him to chime in if there's a relevant question that comes up that we should talk about at that time. So Giancarlo is standing by as well. And as always, I want to hear your feedback. If you guys feel like we could do something different in this webinar, you feel like we could show something a little bit more unique or talk about things in a different way, let us know. I'm very open to your feedback, and we've been doing this now for about 3 or 4 months, and we've had feedback from people that has helped us change the dynamics of this. So we're open to listening to that. All that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the actual demo. Before I do that, I want to put out a poll here. Let's see. This just gives us a little bit of information as to what it is you guys, what industry you're focused on. Are you more with managed service providers? Are you more in the integration space? Are you an IT department that's looking for a tool to better run your business? So just feel free to answer that so we can better apply our demonstrations to what it is you're doing. With that being said, and while you're filling that out, let me go over a couple things. One, we look at our core value. Domotz is a software as a service, and what we try to provide to you guys is a tool that really helps you run your business more efficiently. Our goal is to help you eliminate truck rolls. It's also to make sure that you lower your cost of operations in your business, not only through the elimination of truck rolls, but also just better visibility into what's happening on the networks that you are managing. The other thing that we want to do is really about proactive monitoring. We want to get away from this whole notion of break fix models, right? The idea behind a break fix model is that you guys go and install something or a new service, it goes down, you don't know about it until the customer calls you or your clients call you to let you know that it's broken, and then you have to scramble to go fix it. We think that's rather inefficient. What we want to help you with is understanding that a system that you have installed is down before you get that phone call. So that way you can proactively go after that problem and fix it. And in some instances, fix it before the customer ever even knew that there was an issue. So instead of scrambling, you guys can plan out how you fix the problem, and you can call your customer and let them know that you're on it. It's really about proactive monitoring. The other thing that you're going to notice with respect to Domotz, and by the way, thank you for this poll. It looks like we're about, I'd say, a 50-50 split between what we call IT managed service providers and integrators that are out there. So that's great, and I appreciate you guys filling that out. The other thing that I want to point out, and I don't think we talk about this enough, but one of Domotz's core value propositions is actually our pricing model that we have. We've gotten a lot of feedback on a lot of the forums that service providers love how our pricing model is just a flat monthly fee. $19 per month per agent that's out there, or 19 euros or 19 pounds, depending on where you are in the world. It's really, there's no added price per number of devices. The thing that we do is we create a nice, simple to understand plan. And then if you want to have some of the special add-ons that we have, whether it's team management functionality because you have large teams, or future add-ons that we're going to have around various types of services that we'll get into, we're making it simple for you guys to use. So we're excited about that. One other poll that I want to put out before we dive into the actual demo here is this. I want to understand if you guys have used Domotz before, whether you consider yourself a power user, whether you've never seen it and this is your first time. This really also helps us understand when we're going through this demo what we need to touch on. So while you're filling that out, let's talk a little bit about what Domotz does and how it works. There's really three parts to Domotz. There's the cloud aspect of it, right? We are a cloud-based service. We run on Amazon Web Services, for those of you that care about that. We have a couple different cells, one in North America as well as one that's in Europe that really houses, it deals with the rules and regulations associated with privacy, things like GDPR, et cetera. The idea behind that is how can we help make sure that you guys are getting the service you need in the regions. When it comes to remote connectivity and things like that we'll talk about, we have tentacles throughout the world, whether you're in Australia or the Asia Pacific region or North America, South America, Africa. There are ways in which we distribute through the cloud to make it more efficient for you. So the cloud is one aspect. There's also the agent aspect. One of the things that we often get or hear from our integrators is they love the fact that we have a single agent that sits in the network and it really monitors the network as a whole. We call it a network monitoring agent that's out there, but there's one per site that you deal with. You can run that agent on Windows machines. You can run them on Linux machines. There's even a dedicated black box that you can purchase through our partners or through Amazon, $99 US that are out there. It essentially is housing this network agent that can be deployed very easily and efficiently. Based on what I'm seeing from the poll that we took, that we don't have any power users, so that's probably a good thing. So I won't get too many tough questions today. Giancarlo and I can both be relieved a little bit, but there's definitely people that have seen it. There's some that have never seen it. So we'll try to cater our demo to this. But let me say, besides the cloud and besides that single agent, there is the application. And in fact, what you see on my desktop today here is the Domotz desktop application that's running on a Mac screen. We have this for Windows as well, but you also, and this is where we start to get really powerful, besides having these desktop applications, you also can run the application, the Domotz application, in a web browser. Okay, You also can run it on your mobile device, whether you're dealing with iOS or Android. It's very powerful, and these are great ways that you can, depending on your work environment or your job function within your business, right, can utilize the Domotz tool easily. If you're always on the move, having access to that mobile application to be able to log into your customer systems or reboot devices, it's very powerful, even if you're on another job site, and getting alerts. We'll talk about some of that today. So let's go into the application and how it works itself. So let's see. So what you see here right now is a cloud-based application, right? So we can focus in on sites that we are monitoring and managing. This is a very multi-tenant view. So you can have tens, hundreds, even thousands of agents that you're monitoring on a single site. Very simple red, yellow, green type status, being able to show you when your sites that you're monitoring are either in a great state, they're green, everything looks good, or when they're in a severely troubled state and they're red. When an agent is red, it really means that it's no longer communicating with the Domotz cloud. And by that, it could be because power is out. It could be because the ISP is down. It could be something simple. Simple is in that somebody unplugged the power to the device, or there's a cable that went down. But the fact of the matter is that that site is no longer communicating with our cloud, and there's not much you can do besides a truck roll or calling somebody to fix that situation. The interesting thing is when sites go yellow. So when you have a site that is yellow, it's typically because an important device that either we've classified or you have classified has gone offline, or there could be security issues. And we'll talk about some of these situations here in a moment. Let's talk a little bit about what happens when you get out of this multi-tenant view and you go into a particular site. So what I'm showing you now is really the dashboard of that site as seen by Domotz from a network monitoring perspective. The very first thing that happens when you activate an agent into the Domotz cloud, and just so you guys know, it's very easy to activate a Domotz agent by just entering in your username and password into the agent itself. Once you do that, Domotz starts to take over and starts doing things automatically for you. The very first thing that we are going to do when a Domotz gets activated is we're going to start scanning the network. The thing that you will see immediately from Domotz scans is the fact that it actually tries to enrich the data for you. A lot of systems that are out there, they can scan the network, they can discover all the IP addresses that are active. They also, in some more advanced systems like Domotz, they can discover all the MAC addresses. But where we become unique is we take advantage of our sister company, Fing, and we enrich the MAC addresses with make, model, and type of the device. The reason that this is important is because we start to classify all the devices that are on the network so that you can better understand the types of devices that are on the network, as well as what they are, right? Who the manufacturers are, which ones can be managed. We go a step further, and let's just take an example of this particular device here. What we do is after we've discovered what the device is, we start to look at which ports are available for management on that device. We do that for every single device that's on the network. In fact, on this, I believe that this is a Luxel switch, a managed switch. We've discovered that SSH, Telnet, and port 80 for web management is available on this particular device. We go even further by looking at, especially this device in particular, we will look at it for SNMP community strings. Is it available for management over a simple network management protocol? Right? And we will start to interrogate the switch even further. The reason that we do all this is actually a pretty cool thing here, which is once we start to discover the types of devices and we look at what network infrastructure devices are out there, we can start to build a topology map. We can see exactly which devices are on the network and how they're connected within the network. We can start to broaden out which devices are connected to which switch ports and how they are connected here. We can even start to look for wireless access points. So here's a great example of a wireless access point. And we can see which wireless devices are connected to which WAPs in here. So this is all part of the automatic discovery that Domotz does within this network infrastructure. We start interrogating systems. We start looking at how things are connected. We can even go as far as with very specific wireless access points, such as Ruckus, Cisco Meraki, Ubiquiti, right? A lot of commonly used WAPs. We can start to show details as to which devices that we've discovered are connected to which WAPs, on which SSIDs, which channels, which radio frequencies. And we can start to even, taking this washer as an example, we can start to look at signal strength values, right? How well connected is this wireless device to this WAP? And is it too far away? Are we seeing signal strength issues? We can start to interrogate things really deeply with respect to this. We'll go into some of the network diagnostic capabilities here as well of Domotz, but this really just gives you a general overview about how things are connected. One of the things that I like to show, and it's always fun to do this live just to see what happens. When you're in the device list, a lot of people didn't realize this, but of all the devices that we have discovered, you actually can generate let's call it an inventory list for lack of better terms, that we can save off. The reason that this is so important is, in fact, I'm opening up Excel and I'll bring it over to this desktop here that I'm sharing. The reason this is so powerful is because within this list, we can tell you not only the inventory of all of the devices that we captured, but in a single Excel spreadsheet, we give you all the details of each individual device, what their IP address is, what the MAC address is, what the device type is, even the location of those particular devices, if you have entered that. If you haven't entered it yet, then there's some really cool things you can do here. So for instance, let's say we want to look at the device types. I always like to look at just the cameras. It's a nice, easy thing for people to understand. Let's say that we have discovered all of the security cameras that are in this particular environment, and we want to change their importance, right? How important are they to me managing them? We can change all of those within this filter. We can save it. We can make notes here. But then after we save this file, we can actually re-import it back into the environment, back into the agent. So if I made changes to this system, which I'm not going to do at this point, but if I made changes, I then can, through the desktop application, go in and re-import those changes into this particular agent. It's a nice way to make massive edits to the system. I can put devices that have been discovered into particular rooms all in one. So this is just a little bit of a quick tip for you guys that are new to Domotz as to how you can use this import-export feature. Please keep in mind that this is only available on the desktop apps. You're not going to find this on the mobile apps. You're not going to find this in the web browser apps, but it is a really cool capability that is there. So I always want to make sure I mention that so people know. While we're on this page and while we're talking about device discovery, we often get the questions about subnets and VLANs. I'm here to tell you that Domotz absolutely can scan multiple VLANs and we can scan other subnets. So a great example of subnet scanning is if you're in a small business and you want to look at the status of, let's say, the ISP modem. Okay, that ISP modem is outside the router and the LAN that you're in. It's on a different subnet. You absolutely can enable subnet scanning and look for devices that are at that particular modem. You can set up VLANs. Now, the interesting thing about VLANs, as most of you are aware, is that if you are managing or dealing with VLANs, you need to make sure that the managed switch and the ports are set up to do trunking to the Domotz agent, whether that's a Windows agent or you're dealing with the black box, whatever you're using as the agent. You need to make sure that all those VLAN tags are being pushed to the Domotz agent, but this gives you instructions on how to set that up depending on the agent that you're on. You just want to make sure that you're configuring the switches appropriately. So that's there. And then the other thing that I'll do, here's a great example of us doing some, external host monitoring, right? So if you have a particular IP address that you want to monitor, in fact, at the top here, you can see I'm monitoring Comcast or BlueJeans server. You can see even Google DNS, right? See that things are alive and kicking. You can add those external IP addresses to these systems and see when they go up or when they go down from the point of view of the Domotz agent. So there's a lot of capabilities with respect to Domotz beyond just the standard LAN that you're monitoring. You can look at other VLANs, you can look at other subnets, you can even look at other host IP addresses. So Domotz has a lot of capability there. Let's talk a little bit about the diagnostic capabilities within Domotz. So you've seen that Domotz can automatically map which devices are connected to which ports. But as we start to interrogate the switches a little bit more, you can start to see we grab a lot more data from these switches than you might think. For instance, this particular camera here on port 2, one, we've discovered that it's on port 2 through the mapping, but now we can start to look at information like how much bandwidth is actually going across this particular port as seen by the switch from this device or this camera. Here you can see it's on average doing a 2.3 megabit per second stream. We can look at things like, are errors being discarded by the switch from this device, or are there errors or are packets being discarded, I should say. We can also look at what's the average bandwidth. We can look at things like power consumption. In fact, you may have noticed that we have power consumption on this particular port because it is drawing 6 watts of PoE from that switch. We can power cycle this device here. If we click on this, you'll see that we can actually turn this camera off if we wanted to. So I'm not going to do that right now, but we could do it if we needed to, if we needed to reset something, or if it was in a troubled state and we wanted to try a power cycle remotely, we can do that right here. Another thing that is really powerful with respect to network diagnostic capabilities, aside from seeing just standard things like bandwidth, I like to look at some of the wireless devices that are out there, because usually they have a little bit more variability. And then let's go look at this touch screen here and see how it's performing. One of the things that we can do with all the devices that we discover is do what we call a historical ping or a round trip delay testing. Why is this important? The reason that this is valuable to you is because you can start to see when a particular device on a network, when its performance across the network is changing. If we can see that by pinging the device on a regular basis, that the latency to that device is changing one way or another, then we can make decisions whether we need to, in the case of a wireless device, whether we need to increase the number of access points in the system, or in the case of a managed switch, if all of a sudden we discover that the latency has changed greatly, maybe there's something going wrong with another device on the network that is causing latency on other devices. Maybe there's a priority issue. Latency in general is not a bad thing, but when it varies a lot, that's when it can be trouble for you. In this case, on this graph, you can see through the little gray lines that we have here, at some point we were dropping packets to this particular device. Again, could be because of network congestion. It could be because there was something going wrong in the environment, but this is just another example where Domotz can help you better understand performance within the system. We're going to be talking about alerts later on, but I do want to point out right now that when it comes to network bandwidth, when it comes to round trip delay, you absolutely can set up alerts as to when these types of statistics are varying beyond a specific amount. In the case of round trip delay, if you see the average latency or the median latency going beyond a certain threshold, or if you see packet loss going beyond a certain threshold, you can generate mobile alerts, you can generate email alerts as needed. In fact, one thing I should point out, and I don't really do this too often, but if you are proactively trying to monitor a particular device on the network that's in a troubled state, you actually can do real-time ping testing right then and there. Back here, you can see that I'm pinging this device. It's only a 30-second type of test, but you can see the variability that comes across here. If we were in a state where we were dropping lots of packets, you would be notified here and you would see that those packets are being dropped. In fact, let me, in fact, while I'm doing this demo, once this ends, I want to show a particular device where hopefully this this shows what I want it to show, but I had trouble with a particular TV at this site that over the last month, yeah, this is great. Look at this. So this is something that I discovered. We have a control system in this environment, and what I saw was that every so often control commands were being missed to this particular TV. Like the input wouldn't change when I would select a different source, or when I went to power off the system, the TV wouldn't power off. Using Domotz, I was able to log in and I noticed that I was getting a very significant amount of packet drops on this particular device. I mean, here you can see I'm getting roughly 14% packet loss. Definitely an indication that something was going wrong with this particular site.
Yeah, it's the fireplace, definitely the issue. Too much heat there.
This is a TV that goes above the fireplace. Yes, that is a true statement, Giancarlo. It's always a bad idea, I know, but people do it. What I found, and you'll notice that the system went offline for a day here. What I found is that I actually had a bad connection to a keystone jack. So where the where the category 6 cable was terminated into an RJ45 port, it was bad. I replaced it, and look at the performance that I got. So improved. I no longer see issues on this with this TV now. So real life use case where I noticed trouble in the system. I was able to debug down to the fact that it wasn't actually the control system, it wasn't the device itself, it was actually the network infrastructure that was failing. So I just kind of love this example, but it's a real case in point where Domotz was able to say, okay, it's definitely in this area of the network that you're having the problem. So just a fun example. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't fun dealing with the problem, but I was able to figure it out. So we've talked a little bit about network diagnostics. We've talked about round trip delay. This is actually a point where I want to take you guys to a different agent that we have here, something that's new that we've come out with that some may or may not be aware of, but it's in regard to network management. So one of the things that Domotz has done within the last 4 weeks is we've enabled the ability to look at switches, manage switches, and understand how the configuration of those switches are being dealt with. So anytime you get into a managed switch, obviously you set it up for the particular environment that you're in. What Domotz will do is when we are looking at the running configuration, we will grab a snapshot of the running configuration of that particular device and we will save it to the cloud. But more importantly, when that running configuration changes, we can alert you to changes that have happened. And we can again save off whatever that new configuration is. The beauty of this is that you then have the ability to interrogate or look at these particular configurations and see what has changed from the current configuration that's out there. So if one of your team members went in and made an edit to a particular running configuration, you can see that. Now, there's another really awesome feature here, which I'm sure all of you have dealt with at some point in time. You've gone into the switch, you've adjusted the running configuration, you've made the edits you needed to do, everything's working perfect, and you leave. What you forgot to do is you forgot to save it to the startup configuration. Domotz is going to alert you to when you have a misalignment, or can alert you when you have a misalignment to the running config versus the startup configuration. This to us is an extremely powerful tool. So then even if you'd left the job site before that company has a power cycle, you can save off that startup configuration, whether you do it through the web interface or you store it through the Domotz interface. So this is a great feature to help keep your customers functioning all the time. So I wanted to make sure I put that out there. This is really, I look at this as part of the diagnostic tools because network infrastructure is so critical to to the functioning of your clients and making sure that their work. This feature is enabled on Cisco switches today, but we are, as we're working with a lot of our partner switches, we're making sure that their switches also have this capability. Hey, Giancarlo, is there anything else that I should say about this right now? I know it's a fairly new feature and we're continuously modifying this, but do we cover that in a good way?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's a very clear as you explain, and the capability that you now have to push new configuration file into the system.
Yeah.
In addition to what we are developing, and we will discuss that later, will allow users to, let's say, select multiple devices, same model, same configuration should have, and then push one single file to all of them. That will be huge. So the capability is the good one.
That's a really good point. In fact, being able, like you're saying, in fact, I've kind of highlighted it here, but being able to, if you have a custom configuration from a lab or from another job site that you just want to push to a new site that you've activated, you absolutely can do that here. You're right. So good. Well, thank you. Okay, so we've talked about the discovery of devices. We've talked about some of the network diagnostic capabilities that come along. We've talked about the discovery of the ports for management. Let's talk a little bit about how we get into those ports and how we do some of the more detailed management of systems that are out there. So if we log into this lab here, again, let me show you connectivity capabilities. So Domotz prides itself on our secure remote connectivity. This is one of the distinguishing advantages of our solution that I think helps you better manage these different systems that are out there. Whether you call them IoT devices or you call them systems, we're going to give you the ability to remotely connect into those through the various management ports. The first thing that I want to show, and this is one of our original capabilities, is in fact, let's go to one of these Luxel switches. Let's go to the stronger ones or the bigger ones. But once we've discovered these ports for access, we can make a secure connection. The way this works, in fact, when I click on this, and it's going to bring up a browser page. But what Domotz is doing right now is we're creating a secure connection between the my laptop and the cloud, and then the cloud back down into that remote network that we're monitoring, and in particular to that agent. You will notice that this is creating a secure URL up here, which allows me to then enter my super secret passwords that nobody should know. But that secure URL is only good on my laptop. If I were to pass this to one of my colleagues in the same office that are on the same WAN IP address, it still would not work. They would not gain access to this. The encryption that happens between my laptop and the cloud is then different from what happens between the cloud and the agent itself. But what you see here is now I've created this secure tunnel, as we call it, into this particular device, which now allows me to go in and manage it. If I need to change VLANs or change which ports are on what VLANs or whatever it is I need to do, I can do that remotely. And as I said, in a very secure way. You can do this for CLI or command line interfaces, such as Telnet or SSH. You can do this for web interfaces, whether it's port 80 or port 443. In fact, if you look here, you can create your own types of connections to very specific ports. If you're using third-party tools, so I notice we have a lot of commercial integrators that are online. If you're dealing with services like Crestron or Extron or AMX, and you're using their tools, right? Their management tools to program or to deal with the services and devices that they have. You can actually create a secure port connection and then enable the URL that you get from Domotz into their tools. That allows you then to remotely use their tools over the Domotz cloud infrastructure. So by creating a TCP tunnel, you can do that. If you're dealing with things like laptops or PCs and you want to do remote desktop protocol that are on very specific ports, maybe not the standard 3389 or whatever it is, you also can do those types of things if they are not automatically discovered by Domotz. So those are some ways in which you can get direct connectivity into very specific devices. let's go back. You probably noticed there's this major tile out here called VPN on demand. This is another way in which you can securely connect your laptop to the network as a whole where that agent resides. Using VPN services, I have to imagine most of you are familiar with virtual private networks and the concept behind that. The idea here is that Domotz, the Domotz agent that's on that network, acts as a VPN server that is temporary, that then allows you to use a VPN client, whether you use OpenVPN, TunnelBlick, or one of your choice, right? We provide you when you open a tunnel, and I'm not going to do it now because we're on this webinar, but when you create the secure tunnel, we give you back a configuration file, a secure configuration file that you can then upload to your client and then create that connection. And now your laptop, your server, your PC is virtually on that network. So if you're dealing again with third-party tools where you're trying to look at multiple devices at the same time, you can easily manage that through VPN on demand. So those are two major ways in which Domotz either provides direct connectivity to a particular device or system on the network, or allows your laptop to be put directly onto the network as a whole, regardless of where you are, and in a secure way. Definitely the most common ways of dealing with managing systems on a network through Domotz. Let's talk a little bit about that, one of those core value propositions, which is proactive monitoring. In order to do proper proactive monitoring, you need to have alerts when systems go into a troubled state. There are many ways in which we can generate alerts. We're going to talk about the major ways and the types of alerts here on this webinar today. First and foremost, you'll notice that there are network alerts and there are device alerts. Let's talk about network alerts first. Network alerts occur when the Domotz agent sees something change on the network as a whole. Either a connection is lost to the cloud, or a new device on the network is discovered, or on that LAN and subnet that we're monitoring, or there may be security issues that we see from our perspective. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. We also can do network performance alerts. In fact, just so some of you guys know, some that maybe have been familiar with Domotz before, we used a service that was called MLab, and we still continue to use that. Some of the things you'll see in the next little bit is we're going to start enabling another type of service, which will, we think, give a little bit better or more accurate, depending on where you are, speed results. But we can test the WAN, and that's essentially what we're doing here. We're looking at the download performance from the agent to the cloud, and looking at upload performance from the cloud back into the agent. I think I just said that backwards, but you get the idea. You can generate alerts when that performance degrades. So this is really what network alerts are about. When it comes to device alerts, it is what you think it is, which is if a particular system or device on that network, let's go look at this one in particular. If we want to know when that device falls offline, goes down, we can set an alert for that when it comes back up. If its IP address changes, we can generate alerts. We also, in some of the more advanced capabilities of Domotz, and a lot of you, I'm sure, are familiar with SNMP sensors and the ability to generate alerts on that, we can do that as well. We can create SNMP alerts for a particular device. I'm not sure what this device would have from an SNMP perspective, but if you're familiar with MIBs and OIDs, you have the ability to set these alerts based on particular values within the SNMP server of that device. Things like temperature, CPU utilization, ink levels in printers. You can set alerts when either particular variables are met by a certain value or they go out of the range of a particular value. So there's a lot of capabilities here inside Domotz, and there's a lot of power when it comes to SNMP sensors. You also can, within this, these alerts of a particular device, you can look at are particular software services running on that device. For instance, is a web page, is the web server running on a particular device? Is RDP enabled on a particular device? If there are specific services that you know should be running on a particular port of a device, a management port of a device, you can monitor that and whether that service goes up or down. So the alerting capability within each specific device is actually quite powerful. Let's now talk about the types of alerts that you can get. You've seen in some of these systems, you can do mobile, right? Push notifications to the Domotz application on your phone. You can do email alerts. By the way, with respect to these email alerts, you'll see that it's going to the particular account that you're logged into. But you also can do what we call shared alerts. And this is where we think shared alerts are so extremely powerful to the Domotz system. You'll notice on the left-hand side, there's shared alerts and ticketing systems that are shown here. In this particular demo here, you'll see, or with shared alerts, we have 3 different types of channels, as we call it. You can go to tools like PSA tools, so professional service administration tools, often known as ticketing systems. So here you can see we work with Autotask, ConnectWise as great examples of traditional RMM services that have their own types of PSA tools that are out there. We can go to other more generic services like Zendesk. We also, as another channel, can go to what we call webhooks. Webhooks, when you think of Slack or Microsoft Teams, even Facebook leverages webhooks as a whole. You can add cloud-to-cloud type notifications, so Domotz Cloud to other webhook-based services to be able to push notifications or alerts into those systems. Services like Zapier are another common service that allows webhook ingestion so that it can then do automation or conversion of those webhooks into other tools or services. It's a very powerful way to generate alerts from one platform to another. And of course, you can go to the third channel, which is just standard emails. So if you're using email as a mechanism to, let's say, alert your support team as to what's going on in a particular system, you can enable that. I'm not going to go into the details as to how you set up these particular channels on this demo, but we do have on our community forums and on our web pages videos that talk about how to enable these different types of services. So I'd encourage you to visit domotz.com for this. Let's get a little bit into network security. I mentioned that earlier, and if we go and look at our agents, you'll notice that our lab we've kept with some security issues, and even this particular site has some security issues. Let's talk about that. So one of the things that Domotz does, and you'll notice at the broad, there's this network security tab. Please make no mistake that Domotz is primarily a NOC, a network operations center, and we're looking at the general functionality of systems and the network itself in our dashboard. We are not a SOC. We don't claim to be a security operations center by any means, but we do feel that it's important to look at the various types of ports that are on the network and understand if there are security vulnerabilities exposed. So in this particular case, you'll notice that we do what we call TCP open port scanning. What this is from the Domotz cloud, looking back into the network that the Domotz agent is on, do we see any ports at the router or the firewall that are open? And if they are, if we see an open port pointing to a particular device or a device in the network, we are going to alert you to that. All we're really doing is bringing awareness to the fact that, hey, we see this particular port number as open. What do you want to do? You have the opportunity then to either accept that port as being open and understood, and then we won't bother you again about it, or you can reject it. The assumption is that if you reject it, you will then go in and configure the firewall or the router to close it off. And then the next time we do a scan, if we see it and it's open again, we're going to alert you to it. When it comes to scanning ports, we also scan from the inside out. In particular, we're looking at UPnP, and we're looking at is there UPnP devices or is there a UPnP server that is forwarding ports from particular devices? In this case, you see we've noticed 43 different alerts on particular devices that are taking advantage of UPnP in this site. Yeah, we give you information as to which device or which IP address and which port it's going to, when we discovered it. You can choose to then accept or reject. Now, I will say this as a principle, and I think most MSPs and most commercial integrators understand this, but if you're using UPnP, well, don't. Let's put it that way. We suggest you turn it off. It's a very legacy technology that's out there. I want to go in this particular site because you're going to notice something different. Not only do we scan for open ports and from the outside in, but also from the inside out. You'll notice that this particular site also is looking at default passwords. Now, this is in beta right now, but we think that this is going to be a very powerful feature. I bring it to you because if this is something that you want to see more of, let's have a conversation and send us some info. The idea and concept behind this is if I have a port open on the outside coming into a device that's using the default username and passwords, we now have a major security vulnerability. We want to bring awareness to you about that. Today, this only works for systems and devices that we have drivers, what we call drivers for. But note that we're looking at, is the default username and passwords left enabled on these particular devices? With some of the regulations that have been put in place through California and some things, a lot of manufacturers are forcing you to change these things, which we think is great, but there's still a lot of legacy devices and systems that are out there that use default passwords. So that tab, network security, that's what this is about, right? Bringing awareness to vulnerabilities. I want to talk about one last thing in the last 5 minutes, and then we'll leave time for some Q&A, and that is reporting and logging. A lot of times we have our customers that are asking us about, hey, all this functionality is great, but I want to be able to understand at an auditing level who of my team members are gaining access to systems, or a lot of times if they have a service level agreement in place with their customers, they want to be able to go and show their customer, it's like, hey, this is how often we're logging into your system, even though you're not seeing any of these types of changes or things going on in your network, we're actually working for you in the SLA. We're actually working towards that SLA. This is a great way to show how often you or your team are logging into these systems, the dates, the times, what you're logging into, how you're looking at it. Here you'll notice that just as we did, right, we kind of created the secure tunnel. I showed that. We also showed logging into this port. Now, because of our security protocols that are in place and the encryption that we use, I can't tell you what it is that, I, JB Fowler, did on this particular switch through this port. We don't log that type of information. But what you do know is that, jbfowler@gmail.com logged into this site at this time and made changes. So if something goes wrong, you can address it based on that time frame. So this is one of the logging that we do. You can also generate reports. You can either create one and send it now, or you can set it up so that at the first of each month, it will automatically create a report. It'll send it to the people that you specify. You can add additional recipients, whether it's your team members or your customer. You can say specifically what type of information from the Domotz service should be put into that report. And then you can even filter and sort it and do some really some good things there based on what your needs are. But it's important to note that this report that comes out also doesn't have Domotz's information. It actually has your information. So it will, and I always like to talk about this, but if you go to account and branding, so under the Domotz portal, when we log in, you can enter all your particular information. You can enter your logo, right? This cool cat logo that you probably saw on the knock screen back here, right? So all this that shows up on the knock, that information can be, it's automatically generated in those reports that you create. So if it does go to your customer, it's not about the Domotz service, it's about you and your brand, and that's what we want to get across. So some of these reporting capabilities we think are quite powerful. for you. The other thing you can do, and I already showed you how when you're in the device list, you can export all the devices that are there, and then you can re-import that Excel file. You also can generate a CSV file and send that directly. It's just a very quick snapshot of all the devices that are there at that time, what their status is, what their IP address is, etc. So we think that these are some really cool features that enable you to better service your customers. You know, again, I go back to, and Jordan, why don't you go ahead and throw up that poll about some of these different features that are here. Thank you. We've talked about really the value proposition of Domotz, right? How we can help improve your efficiency. We've talked about the proactive monitoring. We've talked about how you can get network diagnostics, understanding how devices are performing and behaving in the system. We've talked a lot about the ability to manage the systems through remote connectivity and getting into those. I think it's very important to note that Domotz is not there to replace the management tools that come from the different manufacturers. We're there to give you an overview of all the systems that are in the network. And then when you discover that there's a particular system that has gone down, we give you access to use those tools remotely. Again, eliminating truck rolls, being proactive with your customers. And then furthermore, if you do have SLAs in place with your particular customers, right, giving you the ability to show them what it is you're doing for them. It seems that a lot of, this is great, this is a great poll here. Looks like a lot of you are excited about the network diagnostic capabilities through like the device response time monitoring, as well as the network topology functionality, which I agree. I mean, to me, when we look at, let's go back and look at that network topology map, right? When you're able to walk into a customer, even if it's a new customer, a potential customer, but be able to scan their network and then show this type of detail of, hey, here's what I see on your network, you know, and then you can start to do the classifications, right? And say, okay, hey, you know, Mr. Customer, if you look here, you know, this tool, right, discovered all of these different cameras that you have here. Are you aware of the fact that I can come in here and manage these cameras for you, right? And this gets us actually to some really cool differentiating features of Domotz. So when we discover cameras, in fact, let's look at the Northeast camera here. Yeah, so when we discover that these security cameras are in place, we actually look a little bit deeper to see if they're OnViv based. OnViv is an open platform for security systems to allow cameras to communicate with DVRs of different manufacturer types. But when we see that that's there, we can show you things like the different video profiles that are streaming across the network. We can look at the capabilities of that camera as shown by the camera provider. But more importantly, we can actually show you that the camera is functioning as expected. Not only are we going to tell you that it's online, but we can grab a snapshot from that camera, showing you that it's streaming as expected. In fact, I'll even go a step further and say, if you want to get a live stream, you can see that. Now, this is not a high quality, high resolution stream. It's not meant to be. We're not here to take up lots of bandwidth. But what we are here to do is show you that this camera is live, it's functioning, it's streaming as expected, it's pointed in the direction that you think it should be. For service providers that are looking to extend their business and add capabilities to what they provide to their customers, we believe that this OnViv camera support and the ability to take snapshots and put these into reports, we think is really, really powerful for you. We also go a step further. You probably notice when looking at this particular lab that there's a lot of AV devices that are down here. We can look at, you know, Samsung displays. We can grab information like serial numbers from these things. There's not a lot of connectivity that you can do even in smart displays, but we can give you diagnostic information, as we've talked about before, looking at, you know, our packets being dropped. You can see this system's offline because of the way it's configured a lot. But we can also do things like going into AV systems. So whether you're dealing with services like Liberty AV, or in this particular case, we're looking at Wirestorm, we actually can look and see how the encoders, the video encoders, are communicating with the video decoders on this particular network. So for commercial integrators, which I know we have quite a few commercial integrators on this demo, if you're dealing with sports bars, if you're dealing with gymnasiums, if you're dealing with just customers that have digital signage throughout their location, understanding how the video encoders and decoders are connected is another powerful tool. Now, I'm not here to manage this particular system, right? Excuse me. I'm here to give you visibility into what this system is doing so that you can then go, in this case, use the Wirestorm tools to manage it if necessary, or to go into the Crestron system to be able to see how it's behaving. So another powerful tool that's here. We do, this particular site doesn't have it, but when you look at systems like, let's see, I think this one in particular, I think we'll have some Crestron systems. I don't know that we have any CrestNet devices on here, but we can look at Crestron systems. This is a PDU. In fact, I haven't talked about PDUs. Let's just dive into this. You know, while we can power cycle ports on a particular, okay, I got it. So this system may not be configured. Let's go look at, Giancarlo, I need to go configure that system apparently. So I'll do that one of these days. Let's go look at a system like SurgeX. I know that this is alive and kicking. So, whoops, outlets. So here you can associate devices on the network or dummy devices. In fact, this projector here is not a network connected devices, but we added it to the outlet so that we can then power cycle it if we need to. Right. So again, if you have systems that you want to do hard reboots, you can do that through power distribution units. I encourage anybody that has questions about the different types of switches or the different types of PDUs that we support to go to community.domotz.com and check that out. I have been talking a lot. I've gone over my little 5-minute time. Giancarlo, what are the types of questions that we have here?
Yeah, this has been long. Very long webinar, and probably it's longer and longer every single time because we are continuing to add feature, and it's hard to, no, it's very hard to select the most useful one. By the way, we just got the poll on let's rate how we perform during this webinar, and if you like the Domotz platform in general. While looking at the poll, so we received multiple questions. Most of them has been already addressed to directly in the chat. Some of them were recurring, and let me get a couple of them, which might introduce another concept. No, both Nat and Kevin are looking at a way to, let's say they need to scale. No, they both may mention that they need to manage devices at the scale. So this is an important factor for them. So they want to have a way to access multiple devices at the same time to, for instance, change the location or change the zone, or even configure the SNMP on multiple of them. Of course, the current solution is the API, and we probably didn't speak about the API. We probably have, but it's a good way to show what's coming next. And when I say next, it's really next. So yeah, while
Giancarlo, the API keys. I'm glad you mentioned that. So the Domotz dashboard, the web interface, the mobile app are all based off of APIs. These APIs are publicly available to you as a user of Domotz. I encourage you to go to portal.domotz.com, and under settings, you'll find the ability to look at these APIs. So if you want to create your own dashboard, or you want to program things in a unique scripting way, you can do that. I'm glad you brought that up, Giancarlo. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks JP for showing that. So that's the current situation. So you can manage devices on a scale by using the API, and multiple MSP, multiple integrators are doing that on their own. However, as of tomorrow, you will be able to search all the devices which share the same thing, like a name or like a brand, across multiple agents. And JP is showing this right now. For instance, searching for Meraki or Cisco, whatever.
Meraki.
Yeah, and you can basically retrieve the devices all in one view, and then you have like a concept of multi-select. You can select multiple devices, and for instance, Nat was asking for how can I change location and zone for all of them. You can basically edit the location right there, and it will be applied to both the agent that both devices that that GB is just showing right now. The same will work for the SNMP. So you will be able to not only configure community string or credential in general to the devices, but you will also be able to apply the same we call the way we monitor or we get sensors out of SNMP. We will be able to extract a configuration from one device and apply it back to multiple devices that they share the same NIP, for instance. This is probably addressing also the question that is coming from Kevin. But while speaking about SNMP, and this has been asked also by Andrew, the current approach to configure SNMP monitoring through the OID, the single OID, is kind of cumbersome. It's not very easy, especially if you compare with the rest of how easy Domotz is to use. The current configuration of SNMP through Domotz is not easy at all. What the team is working on, and this is probably something that will be available by the end of July, is a way to suggest what you can monitor through SNMP on the specific device. So JB spoke about how we are good in discovering devices and identify devices, thanks to billions of devices already discovered by us and by our sister company Think. Well, on top of that, we are adding some machine learning capability to suggest what you can monitor on a specific device. And this will be based on the usage of our users. So we will inject the first, let's say, a sample that the tool will use, and then the more users will use, the more other users will leverage that kind of knowledge.
Giancarlo, did you say when you think that will be coming out? Is that like within the next few weeks that we'll expect to see that?
Yeah, we're expecting that probably by the end of July, first half of August.
Excellent. Like so, I'm excited about that because we do get a lot of requests for how can I set up SNMP sensors in an easy way, and that's going to be very powerful.
I agree. I completely agree with you. And still speaking about the SNMP, you know that currently we do only support SNMP v2, which at the time we developed that capability was the most used one. We are extending the support to version 1 and version 3, and this is going to come really in the next 3 weeks or 3 or 4 weeks. So very, very close. Cool. Speaking about other question, we had multiple questions about the support of different switches, managed switches. Ryan was asking about Netgear, but I also saw somebody asking for TP links and even switches or even the firewall from different companies as well. It's worth to mention that the support that that JB was showing, the automatic port mapping between a switch and the port of the switch and the device which is connected to the port of the switch is managed by an RFC, a standard. So as far as the managed switch is compliant to RFC 4188, we are able to completely map the devices which are connected to the port of the switch. And then on top of that, JB was showing something which is not standard. The list of switches, PoE switches, where the control of PoE status, not the power over Ethernet status, is not the standard, and that's where we had to develop our own driver to control the status of that port. Still speaking about switches and support, Ron was asking, what about cloud management switches, such as Meraki? Do you want to show that, GB, the Meraki one, and then we'll add about Ubiquiti ones?
I believe through our office here, we are dealing with Cisco Meraki. Is that correct, Giancarlo?
Yeah, that's the correct one. That's the access point where we also extract information about signal level and so on, but also on the switch itself, which is actually, it's the first one. No, that's the Cisco. We don't have a Cisco switch. No, we have just, we don't have there.
We might, that may be in our lab that's associated with this office.
Yeah, but you can show, he was also speaking about access point as well, and you can show that you do connect cloud to cloud to this platform. We asked the MSP or the dealer or the integrator to provide an API key which is, of course, it's a reference from the Meraki cloud into Domotz, so that Domotz can connect to the Meraki cloud and get those information out of that system. We are doing the same with Ubiquiti. At the moment, the support for the Ubiquiti is local. So if you have the Ubiquiti controller local to the network, we allow this kind of information to be extracted from there. We are working to bring this kind of integration on the Ubiquiti cloud as well, or on the on-premise cloud, where the controller is on your own cloud. We are a little bit longer, but I have a couple of other very interesting requests.
It's my fault. It's my fault. I talked too long.
It's okay. It's okay. I think we still have a lot of attendees, and as we mentioned, when we do all of them, we will send the recorded session at the end. Especially because many attendees were complaining about the quality today, both audio and video. It's probably due to some outages that has been experienced all over the US this morning. So it's probably due to that. But I completely feel the presentation was good and recorded clearly. So the recorded one would be good. So the last question I want to mention is Nat again was asking about if there is any recommendation for hosting the agents. No, any particular platform we are recommending to host the agent. Actually, we answered clearly that we do support several, I would say like 30 or 40 different platforms, including the NAS drive, Raspberry Pis, all the Linux virtual machine, and so on. In my opinion, at the moment, the most mature, let me say that in terms of functionality, all the platforms offer the same functionalities. The most reliable one is definitely the Linux one, especially the one in Snap, now the one for Ubuntu. But that's just because on top of all the functionality which are offered for all the other platforms as well, the Snap version will also be completely transactional automatic. It will offer a transactional and completely automatic upgrade of the package itself. So I would recommend that one, and eventually consider the Domotz box as an alternative way, also for the ease of use of the box itself. No, so the Domotz box is probably a way to expand the network that you want to monitor, especially if you have nothing in that remote network and you want to prepare this Domotz box in your office and then ship to your customer, and your customer can just plug into the network and you are in that network basically. That's basically most of the question. Actually, we had a few more and some unanswered yet, but
I think Giancarlo, given the time, because we're 10 minutes over, and again, I take the blame for it this time. We just wanted to address a couple more details given the audience here. We will get, as you said, this up on our website for people to review it, and then any questions that we didn't get to, we will answer those hopefully via email, and we'll reach out to the customers that attended. So thank you for your time, everybody. I appreciate it, and we look forward to speaking to you. If you do have any questions, email support@domotz.com or reach out to our sales team at sales@domotz.com. Either way, we're happy to address questions from you and happy to help you get started. Thank you very much. Thank you, Giancarlo, and thank you, Jordan, also for helping manage the GoToWebinar for us. All right, everybody, talk to you later.